Namaste. Welcome to our YouTube channel, Hinduism Journey of Self-Discovery. Today we will be talking to Dr. Shankar Subramaniam about the Bhakti Marg or the path of devotion. Namaste, Dr. Shankar.
Namaste, Rishi.
Dr. Shankar, how do you describe the Bhakti Marg or the path of devotion to an aspirant on spiritual journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, as we are sort of embarking on the spiritual journey, um, we have some natural predilection. So, let's say I'm an intellectual person. I would like to read something in the book and grasp the truth in an intellectual sense. However, when we go through life over some period of time, we recognize that we're not just a brain, but there is a heart to us also, and the heart is very important. And so I believe that Bhakti Marg um, gives a very natural and easy way to get at this truth or the bliss, because it kind of sidesteps the mental workings which tend to preoccupy us so much, right? But I would not say that it's easy for everyone. So if one has a bit of an intellectual bent, it can be difficult. The ego may intervene, um, but I feel it's very important. So, for instance, without the bhakti aspect, let's say I start an intense practice of Raj Yoga. Um, in fact, the experiences that you have along that path through the intense spiritual practices can bring you to very fearful places. Um, and when we want to confront those fears and doubts, there is no antidote as powerful as bhakti. Yeah. And for the intellectual person also, what happens is the ego starts to impede. So after we master some particular abstruse concept, we can start to feel, oh yeah, I know this stuff. But at that moment, having this humbling notion that there is a greater intelligence in this world than just me, and we can observe it, like we look around in nature, and at least to me, I don't need miracles of the type where somebody produces gold or a bunny rabbit out of a hat. To me, everyday nature is a miracle, right? Isn't it amazing when if you study any living creature, um, the complexity of its behavior, its attunement to the natural conditions, the distances that certain species travel in order to reproduce or to go back to their place of birth, migration of birds. All these are, I think, capable of evoking a devotion, a kind of um, humbling and melting feeling towards this intelligence, right? And when we give that a name, then we can call it God. And again, I would. It's best not to get stuck on the gender, because to me the goddess is very important as well. Neither is more important than the other. So I think from that perspective, Bhakti Marg can be very useful.
Definitely. So, as you mentioned, that to an intellectual, ego can be a problem, or there can be certain not so pleasant experiences on the Raj Yoga paths. So, what do you think would be some constitutional or temperamental characteristics of an aspirant who can derive maximum from the Bhakti Marg?
So the beauty about Bhakti Marg is it's actually open to anyone. Um, you don't need to um, say be a master of Sanskrit grammar in order to read everything, in order to chant the Lord's name. Um, you don't need to be an adept at karma yoga practices. You need not. You may not know the exact vidhi, the procedure of doing every particular ritual, and you also may not feel prepared to commence the rigors of, say, the Raj Yoga and the pranayam and all that. But if one is open to this concept of humbling oneself, then Bhakti Yoga definitely works. So for the people who have an emotional side, a little bit more emotional, I think they're very drawn to it. However, that does not mean that you do need guidance. It leads then to deeper knowledge and an inquiry into the path of Gyan Marg. Um, and I would say that in this channel, we're going to have some videos where we explain the meaning of things. So, for instance, let's take the Vishnu Sahasranama Stotram, very popular. And in that, it's really useful to understand the inner meaning of it. And when that devotion brings us closer to the Lord, then naturally the inquiry will come. Well, what are the the nature and characteristics of the Lord? And when one gets interested in those texts, then actually the introduction to the Gyan Marg happens almost by itself.
Wow, that's very enlightening, Dr. Shankar. So this brings me to another question. So there are four major paths in yoga: Raj Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Gyan Yoga. So how does uh, basically, is Bhakti Marg different than the other margs? Does it lead to a different destination or the same? Or is Bhakti Marg any easier or harder than the other yogas?
That's a very good question. Um, so the first thing is, insofar as the Jnana Marg and Bhakti are concerned, they lead to the same goal. And this is something that's very paradoxical to a beginning aspirant because they seem so different. And in our interactions, I've often likened this to, if you take a path, a highway up, going up a mountain, and in the beginning, it's a broad 4-lane highway with each of these being your 4 tracks. But as you get higher and higher, as you come closer to the peak, you recognize that the road cannot be that broad, and these are all going to converge. And in the same way, the higher one summits in either bhakti or gyan, the true expression of this gyan is to come into the world as a human being and say, yes, there is a Lord, right? And that is bhakti. And the true expression of bhakti is to know the ultimate truth as expressed in the Jnana texts. So they're in fact not at all different when they reach their culmination. So when you encounter someone who says they're on Bhakti Marg but has some sort of um, an antipathy towards Jnana Marg, then you know that some more traveling has to be done, and vice versa. Um, Insofar as Raja Yoga goes, it also leads to the same path, to the same destination, I should say. Um, Karma Yoga is a little different. Karma Yoga is very essential, but it serves to purify the mind, but acts alone or even just mental activity alone cannot lead to this goal. It does need the other three. So it's a peculiar thing. It is necessary, um, but not sufficient, is how we would say it. Right.
See. So, in the Bhakti Marg, what do you think the contents of this playlist will be like?
Yes. So the first thing is when we talk about bhakti, the idea is to bring in some sort of a daily practice for everyone, and that can be something that is suitable for both men and women, and they may have different inclinations. And I think it's very useful to have some sort of, either like if we take Vishnu Sahasranama Stotram, um, but to understand its meaning. So first you begin by probably listening to it. Shravanam is the first step, and it's very glorious. It's very beautiful. Then probably the contemplation of it, and then one's own chanting every day brings you closer. But then finally, really chanting with understanding the meaning, because then just listening is enough in the final stages. But I think the notion of starting a daily practice and something that's suitable for the temperament is what is going to be the goal. So we'll give different samples of popular stotrams and try to explore their inner meaning, so that the person following that Bhakti Marg now has a more rich and informed experience.
Ji. There's a frequently asked question: what is the role of Ishta Devta or Ishta Devi in the Bhakti Marg?
Yeah, so that's a good one. Um, so first of all, if you have an Ishta Devata or Ishta Devi, you're blessed. Because many people are not tuned in that direction. Um, and the way our Sanatana Dharma and Hinduism, the rishis, the way they've devised it, with such a rich variety of gods, right? Different forms of the same one. Um, have been designed because human beings come with different predilections, with different tendencies. Um, so some of us are extroverted, and some of us are introverted, very broadly speaking. And so we have a Vaishnava Marg and we have a Shaiva path. They're not different, they both lead to the same goal. A true Vaishnava knows the importance of Shiva, and a true Shaiva knows the importance of Vishnu. Because after all, these are just words. I mean, Vishnu is that which is all pervading, Shiva is that which is auspicious, and they are both characteristics of the Lord. So, if your Lord is not all pervading, then that's not the characteristic of Lordship, right? So, in that sense, but we are attracted to one or the other, and that's okay. I think that's very good, in fact. So, the goal is to cultivate that devotion in such a way that it takes you to the ultimate goal, which is beyond the name and the form of the Lord, so that one is able to see that underlying unity which manifests as all the different Lords. So, in the end, there is no distinction. However, uh, on the path, there is a certain sequence. So, when one undertakes the Raja Yoga path, um, these gods are not just, shall we say, different manifestations and arranged in some arbitrary fashion. The Just as if I drive from here to a town 20 miles south, I'm going to pass certain landmarks, and in the same way, these forms of the divine represent landmarks on the spiritual path. And for the sincere aspirant who is beginning to commence this by you know listening to these, you will start to recognize those landmarks. And so there is a wisdom in starting at the first milestone and then walking to the next, etc. So that is why we start in our Sanatana Dharma all the prayers first to Ganesh. There's a reason for that, and those things become clearer, I think, as you go deeper into the channel.
See, thank you. Dr. Shankar, tell us something about the power of chanting Lord's name, and how can chanting the Lord's name eventually lead us to Him at the time of departure from this earth?
Mhm. So this is a very good question, because uh, in my youth, before I commenced any of these practices, um, I did not have a very big opinion of chanting. And I hope this is relatable to people who are watching who don't also, right? Um, I honestly thought that it was a bit of a superstitious thing, and I didn't see how it would lead to anything, really. And that was my ignorance. And I think it's very important that we acknowledge our ignorance, because without acknowledging it, one cannot transcend it. Um, so the purpose of chanting is manifold. First of all, it focuses the mind. So when we repeat a certain name, then the name has a form, and it makes us familiar with that form of the divine. The other part is the Sanskrit names have a great significance. Um, they have a certain power to trigger certain parts of our energy body, or pranamaya kosh, in such a way as to take the mind higher up, to elevate the mind. So the specific name like Rama or Shiva, these are not arbitrary. They truly have the power to take one and transcend towards the realm of knowledge from ignorance and take us higher. So chanting is very important. I think it has the purpose of focus, but also the names have specific meanings. And at the time of passing, yes, this is an important one, because as in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Prayana Kale, at the time of passing, he who chants my name comes to me. And indeed, this is true. Um, what the Gyanis and Yogis have done is, um, they have already exited the body prior to death. And so they know the path to take. And what the Lord is telling those who have not made that exit prior is that at least at that time, if you know what is the way out of this burning theater of samsara, that then you will come to me. And so that is very useful, and it's very powerful. And otherwise, as you know, the mind takes on a new body after the passing, based on its previous experiences, and at the very thought it has at the time of passing determines the next body. And then further efforts have to be made. But the Lord is always kind and merciful and draws them, everyone, to Him.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shankar. That was truly powerful and enlightening. Hope our viewers will be able to benefit from these videos. Namaste.